Today we're going to be talking about some of the 2025 interior design trends that have been forecasted by publications like Vogue, Architectural Digest, House and Garden, and a multitude of others. I think I'm going to talk about ones that stood out to me the most and what I think of them and if I think they're going to last. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm sitting in like 35-degree heat in my sister's office. It's fucking humid. I'm coming at you live from a hotbox, basically. Let me just put a disclaimer here for this video. By no means do I think you should be going out, spending money, redoing your whole entire house to follow these trends. Trends are fleeting. And I think the way I like to look at it is you have your core aesthetic, your core style, and you can implement certain things that you like from a trend, like maybe a few different factors that you can implement into your home. But I'm not saying by any means go out and redo your house. First trend that I want to talk about, which I'm actually obsessed with, is arts and crafts, the arts and crafts movement, arts and crafts interiors. And this may not be for everyone, but arts and crafts started in I think the late 19th century, and it was basically a response to the Industrial Revolution where everything was starting to be mass made, like, you know, how it's on steroids now. And people wanted to create houses that had a much more handmade, artisanal aesthetic with sort of a focus on craftsmanship, woodwork, like really taking the time to consider the pieces that were going into their house and how their house was built. And that, I think, is a really healthy and long-lasting approach even to this day. I think we've moved away slightly from the really traditional arts and crafts style. I mean, it's a lot of dark wood, a lot going on, which I love, but I think people have taken a more modern approach to the arts and craft movement. There's a lot of eclectic wallpaper, as I said, board and batten, woodwork, attention to detail. And I think this is a really good premise to keep in mind when you're designing a space, that you can't go wrong with craftsmanship. You can't go wrong with handcrafted, considered pieces, because that's always going to stand the test of time. I just feel like when you're buying mass-produced stuff, when you're buying things that are a bit cookie cutter or like following the trends, it doesn't last. Like, you think you love it and then you look back in a few years' time and you're like, why did I do that? Why did I put that in my home? Like, it's just, it doesn't last. Another thing that I have to say is that I think in interiors, a lot of people are moving away from that like open plan living where you've got every room kind of molding into one, which I don't think will go away completely. But I think that with the arts and craft trend, people are realizing that it's actually really nice to have that separation and to have spaces that are defined, you know, by the walls around them, and like putting one functionality into a space as opposed to having, you know, your bedroom as like where you eat, where you work, where you sleep, where you know, spend time doom scrolling. I think it's really nice that we're now going back to that more traditional sense of like the family home and having rooms that are separated from one another. And I like that we're kind of heading in that direction, heading away from minimal, super, you know, clean, almost sterile aesthetic, because I think that's just been done to death. And it's like, you know, there's no character in that. So that's the first one, arts and craft interiors. Western / ranch style interiors. This kind of doesn't surprise me because I feel like we've been seeing a lot of Western influence for a while with fashion, and you know, all the celebrities are wearing like cowhide and cowboy boots. Like, it's not something that's new, so it doesn't surprise me that it's now bleeding into interiors. And it's not obviously the first time that Western influence has been, you know, a trend. I think it comes and goes, and this one, I really like Western style interiors, but not to the extreme. I think it needs to be kind of pulled back and paired with other things. Unless you literally live on a ranch, then I think it's totally appropriate. But with the Western style trend, you see a lot of natural and rustic materials. There's like a really warm, earthy color palette, which is kind of similar to the arts and crafts trend. I think what I've noticed is a lot of these trends are kind of bleeding into one another. There's a bit of crossover with, you know, the dark, rustic tones of wood, the really handmade feel. Nothing's like overly polished. There's a lot of really interesting textiles and wallpapers and layering, which I really love. With the ranch style, I feel like I'm in kind of a ranch vibe today, unintentionally. This room is giving ranch, is it not? Anyway, there's always that sense of like the Western and Southern accents. There's like the equestrian feel. There's a lot of I guess, inclination towards horse and equestrian features in the house, and a lot of integration of like Navajo and Native American textiles as well, which I think is really beautiful. And I think when it's done right, it looks amazing. So I am supporting this trend of the Western / ranch style interiors. Antiques. This one I'm kind of on the fence about. I want to say antiques and vintage pieces because I think antiques is very specific and there's a very specific aesthetic for that. We don't want it to feel like you're living in your grandma's house. Like anything, it works really well when it's paired with modern pieces or paired with pieces that really contrast the antiques. Same goes for vintage pieces. I think that again, they just add so much character to a space. They're much more unique. They're not mass produced, so they're less likely to be in like a million other people's homes. And there's always a story that goes with them, which is always such a good like conversation starter when people ask about a piece. If you can do a bit of research about the history of the piece or the story, you know, that in itself is like such a bonus as opposed to like buying something from, I don't know, West Elm, Pottery Barn, Kmart, IKEA, Target. Like there's no story behind that. I particularly like, as I said, like when antiques are paired with more modern pieces, so it kind of balances it out a little bit. I don't particularly like the aesthetic of having everything antique, everything vintage. I think there are certain house styles where that approach is a bit more forgiving. So like Spanish Mission, like Federation houses, 19th century style houses. I think when you have a modern house or something that's a bit more recent, it can be a bit risky to try and like force that aesthetic into the space. I think it's really about balance and, you know, picking a few pieces for each space that maybe lean towards the more vintage antique aesthetic, and then pairing that, as I said, with some more modern pieces. I think that's really going to give you the desired effect. So I do really like this trend, and I don't think it's necessarily a trend. I think this has been around for such a long time. Taking pieces from the trends that you might be drawn to, that you like, and integrating them with your own style, if that makes sense. The last item that I want to talk about, which is definitely not a trend in my mind, I'm not really sure why this was suggested as a trend, because I think this is just like good designing, is integrating vintage lighting into your space. I've spoken about lighting a lot on this channel and how important it is and how effective it can be in your space, especially if you don't have a big budget trying to create maximum impact in a space. Integrating vintage lighting into your space will create such a big difference. The benefits of having vintage lighting in your space is, you know, never ending. You've got craftsmanship, the quality is often so much better than a lot of the lights you can buy today. It's a sustainable approach. You're buying something that is old, that has been used, it has a story. It's not something that's just been mass produced and you're buying into that whole, you know, fast fashion, fast interior trend. It's going to add so much unique character and charm to your space. Again, it's another piece that will have a story. And I just think there's so much to be said for having these pieces as like almost like a form of art or decoration in the space rather than just as purely a functional piece. Like you can integrate them into your interior approach, which a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people overlook that. And if you can start to build up a little collection of like vintage lighting, it doesn't have to be super expensive. You can get stuff on Etsy, even if you just start with a little table lamp, a floor lamp or something, and see how that changes your space and how it complements the pieces that you already have in a way that maybe a more generic light couldn't do. So as I said, this is not a trend for me. This is just a really good design approach to integrate vintage lighting. And again, I don't think all your lights should be vintage, for sure. That's not what I'm saying. I think, you know, you do need some functional lighting in certain spaces, but integrating vintage lights with your decor will totally change your space. So whether Vogue and AD are saying this is a trend, I don't really mind, but I am all for this. And if you haven't tried it, jump on Etsy, Facebook Marketplace. If you have a bit more of a budget, First Dibs, Kimono, like there's so many places that you can buy vintage lights, and yeah, give it a go and see how it changes your space. Oh, and also warm globes. Warm globes. We don't want any cool tone globes. Let's just leave that for the hospitals and the doctor's offices. Okay. That felt like a bit of a marathon, but we got there. And all in all, I like the direction that these trends are going in for 2025. I'm really happy that we're moving away from the really stark, minimal, sterile interiors that I feel like we've seen a lot of for the past couple of years, to be honest. I think moving back to that more traditional sense of interiors and taking a bit more time and consideration to really look at the space that you're living in and see it for what it is and put your spin on it, but then you can, as I said, take ideas from other trends. I feel like that's the way to go. It's gonna be so hot in Melbourne, oh my god. It's gonna be 39 degrees Celsius tomorrow, and I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but just imagine that you're basically in an oven and you're a potato and you're roasting, because that's essentially what it's gonna be. Trying to find apartments still, and I'm so excited to find a place so that I can share that with you when I do. And just whenever I see people posting these videos on YouTube, I'm just obsessed. I'm like, I want to do that so badly. So I'll keep you updated on that. And yeah, I hope everyone's doing really well. Hope your February, I cannot believe it's February already. Like, didn't we just have New Year's? I will see you in next week's video. I don't know what it's going to be on yet. Maybe I'll do like some of the worst interior design trends. Let me know if that interests you or not. But yeah, I will see you in the next one.